Welcome to Shipped, proper issue number one, where founders flounder. And what we're going to do in these episodes is we're going to look at the preview version of the newsletter as it will appear on a phone. So see that skinny visual right in the middle of the screen because that's the most friendly to screen recording and actually seeing the full part of what I'm reading as I'm reading it. Understandably, that's going to make it a little bit small, but hopefully it makes sense in terms of the context of the recording. So, shift number one, where founders flounder. And obviously, this link will be live to listen on the YouTube channel once this is published. That's why I'm reading off the preview. So I can go ahead and pre record and have this link live in the issue when it actually winds up in people's inboxes. So, where founders flounder. 90% of startups fail, and 80% of those who do fail fail in the earliest stages. So let's set the stage. Based on ChatGPT summaries of CB Insights and the US Bureau of Labor Statistics data, so obviously this is skewed towards US based startups, not necessarily global, but it still translates. 35 to 45% of startups fail in the idea or MVP stage. And that's the pre product market fit. So before they've really found their traction in the market. And an additional 25 to 35% fail in the early traction or seed stage, depending on how they're fundraising the early stages of the product. 60 to 80% in total, and only counting the startups that even list anything publicly, and again, only in the US. So the 80% number is both likely more accurate and also on the low end. I would argue that probably the vast majority of startups in the upper 90% actually fail at this stage, the idea stage, the concept stage, the pre-execution stage. And there are 1,000 reasons why. But it's easier to look at what a startup needs to make it past these stages, roughly in order, than it is to look at the reasons why they might fail. So, number one, they need an idea, which is easy to skip. But if you talk to any founders, especially repeat founders, having a solid marketable idea for a startup company is actually one of the biggest barriers, especially for repeat founders. I was surprised by that, but that's something I've heard quite a bit since I've been working with founders. Number two, they need a product that can be pitched for pre-orders, accelerators, or pre-seed slash angel funding. Number three, they need a runway, the actual time to breathe and make this thing done, whether that's a day job or savings or early investment or friends and family round. Startup founders need the space to actually build. And depending on the founder, depending on the team, that runway can be shorter or longer, depending on what they're able to deliver how quickly and how ambitious their initial product is. Plan, and that goes back to that runway. A runway can be sufficient or not, depending on how robust the plan is and how quickly it is possible to execute. And then finally, profit. Seriously though, profit is a really important step in any of these succeeding because if your startup is completely non-profitable at the end of the other stages, it's still unlikely at the end of a runway, especially. It's still unlikely to actually ever make it into the light and really become what you want it to be. Now, there are some amazing business and product ideas out there that never get past the concept stage. Some ideas aren't real problems, some aren't real solutions, and some are just poorly conceived. An MVP is easier than ever to make, and that's a minimum viable product. That is the thing you can get in someone's hands to say, this is what it will do, whether that's a demo or an actual functional product. Regardless of what you think about AI or vibe coding, making a semi functioning proof of concept is something more people than ever can do. But importantly, it's still not something anyone can do. Design, testing, troubleshooting, making something functional enough to work without getting lost in the ambition of what you hope it'll become, those are still a series of specialized skill sets. As easy it is to make an MVP now compared to what it was, it's still a gate. And actually, the MVP gate is a significantly stronger one, I think, than people realize, because a lot of the vibe coding tools are not easy to use or not easy to get to the actual execution stage or the launch stage. Uh, and I say that as someone who's figured out how to use several of them, but understanding that I'm more technical than the average bear. Runway is an easy one to gloss over. It's not the 500K pre-seed round that holds most founders back. It's much more basic than that. It's the time, the freedom, and a minimum level of resources to fund development. And this is especially true of this MVP piece, because really MVP and runway are the same barrier level. The time it takes to learn, the time it takes to build, the time it takes to experiment, all of that is time, and time has a cost, period. Just hands, it's there. So the runway actually has to extend before the MVP for any of this to be possible. The runway is an easy one to gloss over. It's much more basic than that. It's the time, freedom, and a minimum level of resources to fund development. Even an MVP takes some kind of web hosting, some level of database, some kind of app store listing, website, custom email domain, vibe coding tools if you're using them. Ideally, enough funds to feed to feed at least one founder during the building stages. That's big because an untold number and percentage of founders fail at that stage just because they don't have the time they need to fully execute the idea, even if it's the best idea out there. Travel funds to meet investors or commute to accelerator programs, those are kind of upper level runway items that people may want. And those are actually cases where a runway can be spent too quickly. I saw a story, I think, yesterday where somebody had flown to multiple investor pitches in multiple conferences and then blew through their pre-seed round with nothing to show for it. They didn't have the product and the paying customers to actually become profitable, which is why that profit rule is one of the most important pieces of actually being successful here. It's not just the runway or the funding, it is the traction to make that sustainable, whether that's an extension of the runway or that's an additional round of fundraising, paying customers, a paying wait list, a pre-order list, a high-end customer that can actually fund things for a little bit. That's an important note. We're still basically every startup support option out there requires that founders have gotten past this step on their own. And that's one of the big things is like if you apply to a startup accelerator program, if you apply to an angel investing fund or a pre-seed round, basically every single one of these says, hey, do you already have paying customers? Which always makes me chuckle a little bit because if you have paying customers, you don't need the investment round. You need to get more paying customers and keep those folks happy, but you already have a revenue stream. And a lot of folks end up kind of getting tangled in this part where they'll get investment that the acceleration is beyond their customer growth, where they already had some customer growth. And if they had just a little bit more runway, they could go to bootstrapping in a very sustainable, effective way instead of going to like an explosive growth attempt, which a lot of these companies and founders aren't really prepared for. And here's the kind of kicker takeaway for all of this is that I talk to founders every single day who aren't going to make it past the MVP stage because they can't fully build one. Whether that's not understanding how a database works, which is no joke, even if you're building this thing, you've seen a functional app on the market that does this. If you're a non-technical founder and you can't get to the point of like understanding how password storage works or how data security works or how single sign-on works, like all of these sort of basic fundamental gateway tools at the beginning of an idea, if you can't get past that concept, even though not being able to make a downloadable, shareable app or glacial customer growth. The point I want to make on that is that that's a really easy technical hurdle to overcome. You can do a little bit of quick research. You can have a technical phone co-founder. You can talk to a technical consultant. There's a lot of things you can do to get past that hurdle, but it's still a hurdle that stops a lot of people. And if you're in the idea stage of building a product, not understanding how that part works can hamstring an idea before it even gets out of the gate. So there's a lot of this. There's a lot of early founder support and education that could be incredibly helpful towards getting these founders beyond this point to where they could be successful founders on their way to a successful launch, but they don't make it because of very basic stumbling blocks like that. Oh, it's a beautiful picture. This is the Peneda de Gerês um, National Park in northern Portugal, and this particular moment is a very high Miradouro or an overlook looking down at a river valley at the hillside on the far side. And the note here of that, that's an awfully long walk. Because you look at this and you can, of course, see the town over there. You can get to it by car, but if you have to walk and get there on foot, it's going to be dramatically harder and more dangerous, and you might not make it. The thing is, you can, like, that is a completely doable trip by either route. But the degree of challenge between walking versus getting transportation over there, getting airlifted by helicopter over there, is spectacularly different depending on which path you take. It's an awfully long walk. You can drive around, of course, if you have a car and fuel, and assuming the roads are open and that there are roads. That's the cliffhanger I want to end on for now. The gap, where support is lacking the most. We're talking about a massive field of brilliant products and founders who need the lightest possible nudge to take off. And I mean take off. These aren't small ideas or incapable founders. In many cases, they're the best of the field with brilliant and highly profitable ideas. They just need a tank of gas to get there. And that's something I'm running into a lot working with founders at different early stages is that the ideas are good. In many cases, the products are good. In many more cases, they have a customer base, but they run out of runway before they can actually build on that. And that is in no way an indictment of the business plan or the product or the founder. That's the crazy part. A lot of it is luck. A lot more of it is luck than I think the general conversation assumes. It's assumed that like not enough effort was put in, the founder wasn't good enough, the product wasn't good enough, which means that a lot of really brilliant business models and products end up in the dustbin because they didn't take off within the expected window if the founder was good enough. So let's talk about our founder of the week. This is Luca Kazumasima, who I met in person, who's a really, really awesome dude. And he is the co-founder of the link shortener platform ShortPen. Great guy, Luca. And I wanted to make sure to highlight him and spotlight him because I wanted to make sure this is a case too where early stage founders just having somebody say their name and put their image out publicly is a way to support and help them. And that's something I can do here. And one thing I want to continue to do with this newsletter. So, hi, Luca. Luca's ShortPen is a link shortener. And so what it does is turn this massive soup of a link that is a LinkedIn share link into this. And you see this very, very short, customized short URL code. And the thing is, if you're sent these in an email, one looks pretty good. Say it could even be a hyperlink that's just like click here, as opposed to this. Like this immediately looks fishy, and most people don't want to click on a link that looks like that because it looks crazy. Uh, and then, of course, why? Why shorten a link? I just covered that a little bit, but obviously that's very handy for anything with a character limit where you want to share a link, such as a tweet or an X post. And it just looks way better. And if you think even about a LinkedIn post, you don't want half of your post to be just the link gunk. Also, in addition to the short link, you can create QR codes, which open up entire new avenues to get the link to audiences without them having to click on anything. Picture like a t-shirt or a hat with a QR code on it. Somebody takes a picture of you and boom, they're like, oh, what's this? The real magic, though, is in the data. In that first link, see everything after the question mark, and that is all of this, the whole last three lines and the question mark itself. The UTM source and all the rest of that mess. That's data. Attribution, traffic sources, and destinations. That is the tracking tag that goes on with that link that tells the servicer of that link, so in this case, LinkedIn, where clicks come from and where they go. Who clicked on that link, where they clicked on it from, where the link itself originally came from. And all of that information informs what you know from traffic on that link. That's attribution, traffic, sources, and destinations. Short links give you direct access to who is viewing your site, when, where, how often, on what device, etc. A huge, huge treasure trove of usable data for marketing campaigns, social media creators, e-commerce sites, you name it. Now, just to highlight this again, if I copied this link over, all of that attribution and marketing tracking data goes to LinkedIn, and then LinkedIn can do whatever they want with it. However, if you take that and you put it into a link shortener through ShortPen, then your account in ShortPen is the one tracking that data, and you are explicitly using ShortPen to have access to that attribution data. So that tells you the information that you need to know about your link and your traffic. So that already is shifting the ownership to a point where it's actually practical and useful to you, which is a point I didn't make well enough in the written version of this article. It's a proven model too. The company bit.ly or Bitly popularized the technology of a link shortener. And I learned about Bitly from when I worked at Yelp years ago, because then you had character limited posts and you needed to include direct links. Bitly was a great way to do that. And also did that tracking data thing for organizing events or doing marketing campaigns. Let's see, and is now a 100 million ARR company, annual recurring revenue, with a low overhead and a small team supported by it. So Bitly is a very, very profitable company. And that's one of the really cool things about this product is technically it's relatively simple. Here we go. Again, it's technically simple, but you can also include premium features like custom domains, say a slash marketing campaign or slash company name, without even the shr.pn in the link. Higher number of QR codes, branded QR codes, white glove service. There's a lot to sell to the highest end customers, and it's a really marketable tool. And to highlight the link shortener piece here, you can build this tool, and then all it is like this device will turn this link into a short link with you can pay to have a custom name on it, and it will give you this data and serve it in a nice packaged way. It's something that is, as far as tech tools go, pretty straightforward to build, and you can make a really nice version of this that does a lot. And then it's a relatively small team needed to support it. So it's a brilliant idea. There's a ton of growth potential here. It works really, really well. So how does, but here I just called out there's a 10-ton gorilla in the market. There's an established player that already does the exact same thing that ShortPen does technologically and in terms of customer base and name recognition. They're already ahead. So how does Lucas Shortpen beat bit.ly or Bitly? First, he doesn't really have to. There's enough room in the market for both, and if his tool works as well as theirs, as well as Bitly's, the two are cross promoting each other just by talking about the power of link shorteners in general. And this is true for a lot of startup founders is that if there are four companies on the market all making the case for why this product is great, anybody who sells that product benefits just by exposure, just by general understanding, just by people understanding what this does and why. That is free marketing for your tools and software as well. So just because there's already a big player on the market is no reason not to do it. In fact, that's arguably reason to do it. Second, Bitly is venture funded slash investment backed, pressed hard to generate as much revenue as possible as quickly as possible. And to the next point, Bitly left a door open. That brings us to our next section. Bitly being venture backed isn't by itself a bad thing. And this is something I'm going to talk about a lot in terms of startup strategy. You have a lot of decisions to make about how you fund, who you partner with, what you choose to do moving forward. And venture funding isn't always the best route. And venture partners can ask very different things of you. So we'll get to that here. It isn't by itself, in and of itself, a bad thing. It means that Bitly has deeper pockets and a healthy runway on top of an established brand and user base. That's an advantage. What makes it a liability, that is the venture funding, is that pressure to maximize profits and minimize costs, which is a very common ask from venture backing. To leave no stone under monetized, which as a customer focused person is something that also makes me cringe a little bit. What's the worst thing a marketing and advertising tool can do to their customers? Quick question on that. They can advertise their competitors first, right there in the marketing campaign. And this blows my mind. Bitly recently made a change to their free slash trial plan. The advantage of direct short branded links, pretty much the whole thing that makes them valuable, is removing that friction. I talked about the QR code in a hat being a really good way to get people directly to your ad campaign as fast as possible, while also having the link attribution that tells you exactly where that traffic came from. So you know, hey, that hat was a good investment. Let's do it again. Taking potential customers or viewers to your content as quickly and conveniently as possible. That's huge. You click on something, it should take you where you want to go. It should take you to where the person who gave you the link wants you to go. Like imagine you click on the menu at a restaurant and the first thing you see is an ad instead of the menu. That's a bad experience. And if you're traveling, that's using up your data on a video ad instead of giving you the menu. So that's a really, really bad, that's a really bad user experience. So Bitly added ad breaks. So what they did is for the free or trial period tier folks who are using these link shorteners, they are selling ad space to advertisers. So if you scan the QR code, you go to the destination link, there's a stop in the middle where you watch an ad before you get to the intended destination. And there's a hard stop between your customers and where you want them to get, which is really bad in terms of what the product is supposed to do, period. It breaks the most fundamental appeal of the tool, and there's nothing stopping those ad breaks, being targeted ads, from showing your competitors' ads before your product page. So say you're at a trade show about AC units. So there's clearly enough data traffic around there for targeted advertising to be like, they're here right now at this moment. I should serve them ads for an air conditioning installer. And say they click on your short link to go to your air conditioning unit. Instead, they're served an ad for another air conditioner and they assume that's you. So then your advertising is feeding your competitors' leads live real time right there because of the tool that you used playing fast and loose with your data or your traffic rather. That is super duper valuable ad space for your competitors to reach motivated customers immediately before they see your stuff in a flow where they could potentially not even realize it was an ad. Ouch. So you see why that's bad. You see why that's a massive red flag, and I think a really unfortunate design decision by Bitly. And I would be fairly confident that decision was venture backed, that they're looking for a place to sell valuable ads to monetize the free trial plan so that they can make the profits required from their venture backers. Hmm. Now, this only affects users on the free plan, which sure, but that's going to be the bulk of your users. That's your marketing. That's your advertising spending. That's how you bring people into the platform. It's how you make the use case for commercial level customers. It's how you build your user base in general and tell people this stuff works. So if they assume that this product has ad breaks, they're not going to use it. They will immediately think the value is like a Trojan horse that'll actually hurt them instead of benefit them. That's a really bad experience. Yeah. Again, only affects users on the free plan, but you can pay Bitly's premium plan fee to bypass that. Except Bitly's paid plans go up every year. In the contract, there's a built-in assumed 3 to 5% increase every year, which is fairly standard. But still, it does mean that the cost you're paying will be assumed to go up year over year and might have ads added later. Because if they added ads once to the free plan, they made a bunch of money. That's a lot of incentive for them to add ads to the paid plan as well, as an additional way to get money. If you look at what just happened with the streaming platforms like um, Netflix and Disney Plus, profitable, very profitable platforms, decided to add in ad breaks, which were one of the things that made streaming platforms so competitive in the first place was that they didn't have ads. And none of these companies had to add ads. It's one of those ways where they're breaking the product and reducing the value of the experience to consumers and driving consumers off of these tools for the sake of milking additional profits. And I understand the draw, of course. You want to make profits. I get it. You want a healthy business model. But I'm very much in favor of pricing plans and business models that hold the user experience and the base default value of the product sacred. So that's where the ad breaks and all of this stuff really are problematic because that really hurts user trust in the experience and it's even unconsciously instead of a customer having a warm fuzzy every time they boot up Netflix, they will be bracing themselves to see what terrible ad they're going to be served before their show starts. Or there's that cliffhanger in the middle and there's an ad break. And if the tone of the ad or the ad break are way off from what they were watching, pulls them out of the immersion and is very likely to make them stop watching sooner than they were otherwise, or not watch when they were thinking about it. Important notes. Okay, so here's the takeaway. Luca, going back to Luca, is a standout founder and has built something great. It's functional, it meets a need, it's working, and it's live. He has paying customers and a healthy base of freemium users who are the free trial users. And he's taking a proven business model with a technical background and a co-founding team behind it, bring back an earlier version of what Bitly was when it was customer focused. And I've kind of hammered on that point quite a bit. Next comes the elbow grease, getting loud, running the sales, staying the course, and building the thing he's wanted to build from the start. It's all about clearly articulating the value proposition, which Bitly has helped lay the groundwork for. Getting in front of the people it matters the most too, such as your like large scale commercial marketing teams, and bringing in more and bigger paying customers, which is a completely feasible approach from here. Bringing it back to the opening, I want to shout out Luca and Shortpen by name. There's a lot to celebrate, and it's a very cool example of an ambitious technical founder and an early growth stage who has a clear path to success based on what he's already accomplished and what he has in hand. And he might fail. To founders, as Captain Picard once said, it's possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That is not weakness, that is life. This is the path you're setting out on. One of the most vital things a founder can do is take that quote, all of it, to heart. Embrace the challenge, thrive in the growth, know that failure is possible, and that failing isn't the end. That's important. That's a really important thing to know and take to heart as founders. To investors, accelerators, and governments who want to take this ecosystem and help it thrive, call this a small reminder to take a closer look at the models. Who and what projects are out there now? Where are they, or where they are, how they can succeed? Take a minute to consider your investing model not just as a vehicle to poke holes in ideas and see where they'll sink, but to see just how far they can go with a new sale. If one of the founders of Google was in your office in the early days, would your model have allowed them to become what they are now? Would you have invested in them at all? And that's a really, really important note to end on because if we look at the most successful tech giants right now and what they've become, their entire structure was unrecognizable from what a lot of the rapid growth startups we see now are. And they were the ones that demonstrated the incredible financial and business success that was possible through startups and through tech startups and through the software space. And every day we are actively and publicly forgetting some of the most important lessons that their founding stories taught us and the maturation of their companies taught us as they grew. So there's the big takeaway. Hopefully that does something to think about as we move on here. Post of the week is from Throxy's Are No IRB on team offsites being a launch point for the next big wins rather than a victory lap on the last ones. And that's a great note because the glow, the emotional peak of an offsite is an amazing point to run on, where a lot of the time it's before a vacation. So you just like get everyone psyched up and then send them home. I personally have always felt more energized and ready to get back in the mix than ever after offsites. So I really appreciated that one. That was a good point. Our news tidbit of the week is just a quick call out to Europe's leading startup hubs. There's a nomination program, there's a quick awards program to see which ones are the best. So jump in on that and go ahead and throw in a vote. Until next time, you can find me on LinkedIn and see more and listen to this issue on YouTube where you are watching this right now. As always, like and subscribe. I would love to hear your comments and see what you think about this issue and what I should cover next. I have a lot of in-depth conversations every single day, and so there's a lot I can cover. Mostly, I need to focus on shorter, punchier issues that have a clear focus, and we'll see how I do on that. Till next time, cheers.